The Tide of New Beginnings is the third book in the Creeke series. It is a continuation of the story arc that I developed back during the time when Creeke was meant to be a fantasy series. This book focuses on the Brown family, specifically the 6 children of Torrance Brown: Drake, Karla, Mary, Andre, Adrianna, and Antoine. When I first started developing this part of the series, I came up with it because the character Torrance, I needed to explain why he was the way that he was. And so we kind of touched on that a little bit in the first book, but this book goes more in depth with how his children view him as a father and how they see their relationships with him. The Tide of New Beginnings is a coming of age story where the Brown children, as they come into adulthood, will have to decide whether to accept the flaws of their parents or hold them against them. And it basically focuses on his children and how he as a father impacted his children. The children, they're coming into adulthood and they are beginning to realize that their parents are humans and it's up to them on whether they want to hold their parents' mistakes against them or if they want to forgive them and try and move forward. Going into this next installment, the themes I wanted to explore were parent-child relationships, sibling relationships, generational trauma and healing, forgiveness, mental health, the impacts of divorce and remarriage, early adulthood, romance, friendship, and coming of age. Because there are 6 protagonists, I wanted each one to have their own distinct voice and story because each kid has like their own things going on in their lives, and each kid has their own individual relationship with their father that might be different from their siblings' relationship with their father. Each kid has been affected differently by their father, and so that's really like what is the big like thing to explore in this book is like how has Torrance impacted each of his kids and how has his actions affected the relationship that he has with each of his kids. I wanted to incorporate elements that were unique to the Brown family's identity. In the town of Creeke, they are known as a modest, music-centric family, and I wanted to showcase that by incorporating music and poetry into the story. To accomplish this, I had to research. My favorite part of writing this book, typically it tends to be character writing, but I would say for this book, my favorite part of writing this book was the research because I just learned so much that it was to the point that sometimes I would be overly researching things for like a small little detail of the book because the research was just so interesting and so intriguing. I think I've done more research for this book than I have the previous 2 in the series. A huge part of my research was researching poetry, the history of rap music, the music industry, and what people do to survive and thrive in it. Rap and poetry were huge parts of this book's identity. Because Torrance is such a main part of this character, you know that's going to be a huge part of this book. But you can always tell when it's Torrance's perspective because his poems are always going to be written in rap. But you know, with the other characters, we get to explore like different types of poetry. And so my research just consisted of really just studying because this is the Brown family and because music is so intrinsic to their family. There was a lot of study on music, on multiple genres, because the Brown family, they're not just a family that loves rap, they're a family that loves music, period. So you know, different family members are going to love different styles of music and different types of music. So I was sitting here researching all types of different types of music. I think the heaviest part of the research was researching music because of how intrinsic it is to that family. So as you can see here, this is my spreadsheet of like all of the songs that I have been like listening to and like selecting for research to use as like to study when it comes to writing like the lyrics and stuff in the book. There's 6 categories. There's rap, there's freestyles, there's Christian rap, there's R&B, there's rock, and there's gospel music. And then there's another category called other. So of course the category with the most songs in it right now is the rap category because that's the category that's most important to this story. So right now there are 1,160 rap songs in the spreadsheet at this current moment, and I'm still adding to it. That's my spreadsheet, and how I split it up is like the song, the artist, how long the song is, the year it came out, what the label was that the song was released under, the beats per minute of the song, and the location of like not only where the artist is from, but also where the label is located because the region is important because different regions have like different styles, and so that's important. By the time we got to August, I had got my database organized. Like I had the music I wanted to study and stuff like that. So it was going pretty well. The music side was. The poetry side, I still needed to like sit down and actually like read some poetry, practice some poetry. So I researched different styles and looked at examples from different poets to learn as much as I could. Because by the time it came time to write them, I wanted to make sure that I had the skills to do it. I could say by September, I was starting to slow down a little bit on the research because it was like, okay, now we actually gotta put the research in the book. But I was still doing some research, just going over what I already had and like getting rid of what I didn't need and keeping what I did need. And although I spent a good amount of time researching rap and poetry, it was not the only thing I researched. I wanted to create a distinction in the writing between the adult and teen characters. I wanted the adults to have more adult writing and the teens to have more juvenile writing. In order to accomplish that, I studied like different types of media targeted at teens. Those were what I was looking at. And the goal was to really create a distinction between the characters who are out of high school, they're grown, they're in their adult lives, and the characters who are still in high school. To drive home this distinction between the adult and teen characters' perspectives, I chose to emulate the writing styles used in the fiction books I still have from my time in middle school. Although this writing style will read much younger than the actual ages of the teen characters, I felt it was an appropriate choice because it would further help distinguish the difference between the adults and the teens. So I've been working on the younger protagonist parts, the younger protagonists who are in high school, and I just wanted to share like some of what's been found in my research. So to write their part, I have been looking at all of my old books that I had when I was in like middle school. And what I did was I took the first chapter of each book and I basically got the statistics from each book. And the statistics are like the readability, which is like the grade level of reading for each book, the average sentence length, the average paragraph length, the number of paragraphs, the number of sentences, the number of words, and then the percentages of the type of sentences used in the writing of the first chapters of each book. What I found is that the average reading level amongst all the books is like around third to fourth grade reading level. So that's going to be what I'm aiming for when writing the younger protagonist. Average reading level for an adult type of novel is about 7th to ninth grade because that's the average reading level of the average American adult. That's just what I found interesting while researching like all of like the middle school books that I had. When I was like reading my middle school books, one thing I really discovered that was very interesting in my research was how mature the storylines were. That just kind of taught me not to underestimate what things younger people go through. That was kind of inspirational because it was like, okay, so I can make these topics that these kids are going through, I can still make them work with the younger style of writing. Overall, the research I did was not only informative but also enjoyable. Although there can tend to be a lot to go through in the research portion, it's worth it when I begin the writing portion. When I first started on this book, I was optimistic because it was the only book project I had to focus on in 2023. However, I quickly discovered that the book and what I wanted to do with it experimentally brought its own set of challenges. While I began officially writing it in February of 2023, I already had some scenes and dialogues completed from working on the story during previous books. Honestly, going into it, I thought the hardest part was going to be writing the poetry, but that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was writing the actual book. And it wasn't necessarily like writing the book itself, but more so like trying to write this book while also trying to like do everything else I had going on in my life. Time management was a huge contributor to the success of finishing this book on time. When the year started, I focused more on researching and setting up the plot for the story. So today is Monday, April 10th. I realize it is April and I have not done a single update on how the writing of this book is going. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't touched this book really all that much. Like, I've put my framework down, I've got the storylines planned, I've written some scenes, like if a scene comes to mind, I've written it. Like the scenes I already had planned out while writing the first two books, I've already written those. And any new scenes that have come to mind, I've written them down, of course. But for the most part, I haven't really like done any in-depth writing on this book yet. And that's not really abnormal for me because it's usually about this time that I get to writing the book full on anyways. But I do need to get started because my deadline is in December. And unlike Creeke and the Disappearance, which had 40 chapters, I plan on putting 50 chapters in this book. So that's 10 extra chapters I need to write in the same amount of time frame I gave for the first two books. So this book is focusing on the Brown family. The title is The Tide of New Beginnings. That is the final title I have settled on. Now, writing wise, I once again am experimenting. Of course, it's focusing on Torrance's children, Drake, Karla, Mary, Andre, Adrianna, and Antoine. If you've read the book, Drake, Karla, and Mary, they're grown. So their perspectives, of course, going to be written with more of an adult writing perspective. But for Andre's 18, so he's an adult, but he's still in high school. And Adrianna and Antoine, they're teenagers. All three of them are still teenagers in high school. So with them three, the other experiment I'm doing is writing their perspectives kind of like how books targeted at teenagers are written. I still have some of the books I had from when I was like a teenager, but more like early teens, like in middle school, like 13 and 14. So I'm going to read those. I'm going to try and get the writing style down from those books so that I can use it for those perspectives. So because of that, I don't know if for this month I want to focus on just writing Drake's chapters, or if I want to focus on getting Drake, Karla, and Mary squared away, because I need to give myself time to actually read those books so I can get the style down for Andre, Adrianna, and Antoine. What I will say is I am excited for this storyline. This is the moment that the Browns have been building up for as far as Torrance getting married to Gretchen, so I'm excited for that. And to be honest, another reason why I really haven't been focused so much on writing this book as much as I was with the first two is because I have a lot more going on than I did at the time with the first two. So I'm hopeful that by the end of this month, by the end of April, I will either have finished all of Drake's chapters, or I will have Drake, Karla, and Mary squared away with what I want to do for that specific part. And hopefully my poetry skills will improve enough so that I can actually write good poetry. One of the things I tried to do differently in writing this book was setting smaller deadlines for myself leading up to the big deadline. I believe by doing this, I could be more efficient and feel less stressed in writing the book. Today is April 15th. I wanted to give an update on how the writing is going. I've decided to focus on doing Drake's chapters this month. And so by the end of this month, I want to be done with Drake's chapters. Next month, I can focus on Karla. And after that, Mary. And then I have to start getting into the style of teenage writing. Although I set many deadlines for myself, I found that meeting them was a lot harder than I expected. However, even though I didn't meet those deadlines, I still had to keep myself encouraged that I would meet the big deadline. Today is May 1st. I have not made the progress I would have liked to have made on the book. I've made some progress, but it's not the progress I would have liked to have made, but it's okay. We studying all this stuff, we doing all this stuff for research, but it's just like the progress I would have liked to have made, I haven't made. So this month, I got to do what I did last month first, and I got to accomplish what I want to do this month. So that's about like 12 chapters, so we'll see how that goes. I can talk a little bit about what I'm doing with this book. We're writing 50 chapters this time, 50 chapters. We are incorporating poetry, so I gotta be on point with that. Like I've already touched on earlier, the writing styles are gonna be like, it's gonna be like two separate writing styles used. The protagonists are, of course, Torrance's kids, Drake, Karla, Mary, Andre, Adrianna, and Antoine. So Drake, his storyline is him in the city. He, of course, we've been building up to what it's gonna be like for him living in the city, so that's what we're focusing on with him. Karla, she is, living with her mom, so we kind of get to explore her mom's side of things because we didn't really get to see too much of their mom in the first book. Like, she was there, but because the kids don't live with her primarily, we didn't really get to see her all that much. So through Karla, we'll get to see more of what goes on with her mom's side of the family. I'm gonna leave Mary a surprise because Mary's storyline, I feel like that's gonna be very interesting. Andre has a lot going on. He's having issues feeling visible not only in the family but around town amongst the townspeople. Adrianna, of course, is dating. Their relationship is gonna be part of her storyline. I try to give the characters storylines outside of romance, so she has a storyline going on with the Little Sister Society. And then there's Antoine. Antoine has gotten himself into some trouble. That's what's going on with their characters. The main storyline of this book is the wedding between Torrance and Gretchen. It's gonna be a lot of background storylines going on. We gonna see a lot more expansion of the town in this book. And that's why I had to be 50 chapters, because the Brown family is big. So last month I wanted to work on Drake's part, but I fell behind. So this month we will be working on Drake and Karla's parts. So we'll see how that goes. Today is May 29th. Writing wise, I have not made no real progress, let's be real. It's kind of like last month where I have been writing the scenes as they come, but I haven't really sat down to like write like how I should be. I've made good progress research wise. So even though I haven't done what I was supposed to do as far as writing the book goes, research wise I've done a really good job. And the reason why that's good is because when it comes time for me to actually sit down and write this book, I'll be able to go to my research and it'll be right there. I won't have to go scouring and looking all over the place to be right where I need it. I know what I want to write, but the way I want to write it, I need to get acclimated to writing it that way first. And then I've been going through the first books in the series all over again, refreshing myself on details, picking out details I can use to further expand on the story, stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. By the month of August, I had made some progress on the writing. It wasn't necessarily the progress I would have liked to have made. Typically, the majority of the book would be written in the latter half of the year, so I wasn't all that concerned because this was normal. It just seemed like it was a lot to do for this book and not enough time to do it all. It's a similar challenge to what I have with the last book, where I just had to like take advantage of the time that I did have to write the book. I still believed that we could get this done on time. We could stick to the timetable if I was really just diligent and did what I was supposed to do. So I didn't have no concerns at that time. So because this book had more content in it, by the time we got to October, I wanted to have like the chapter writing done so I could focus on like the poetry. That was the goal for the latter half of the year. So today is August 2nd. We're in the second half of the year, and I am really trying to be diligent with this story because I really want to have like the characters parts done by the end of September, so that October I can focus on the songs and the poetry. I feel like those things are going to need a month within themselves just to work on. So I'm hopeful that I'll have the characters parts written by the end of September so that I can solely focus on the poetry and the music in the month of October. And so that way I'll have November and December to edit, so that way it won't be like last year and the year before, where I was flying through the editing in December trying to make it by deadline. I need to get done with the adult characters parts because the kid characters, I've been writing the scenes and stuff, but I'm going to have to re-go through those scenes and like rewrite them into the style that I want them to be in. So that's another reason why I'm trying to have like the stuff done by the end of September, so that way I have enough time to actually do all of this stuff. Because we're in the second half of the year. I feel like I've been doing a good job like writing down scenes and stuff and like writing stuff. So I need to like actually like now get to the parts that I've kind of been skipping and actually like go and sit down and write them. But overall, I am excited for this book. This is probably the most experimental one I've done so far. I know I've said that with every book, but I really feel like it with this one. This is probably the most experimental one, the riskiest one by far, especially because I'm utilizing poetry, and me and poetry do not get along. But we gonna have to get along for this book, so let's see how this goes. By the month of September, I had made pretty good progress on the book. I had, for the most part, completed Drake, Karla, and Mary's parts. I still had some scenes to fill in with them, but for the most part, I had completed it. So, in the month of September, my goal was to complete Adrianna, Andre, and Antoine's parts because I really needed October and November to work on like the music and the poetry and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure that I had all the writing done by the end of the month to accomplish that goal. I was trying not to stress a little bit, but it's typical that by the month of September I start to stress when it comes to writing a book, because it's like, okay, it's September, we're publishing in December, and you know the writing is not where I like it to be. I was starting to feel pretty stressed by September because it's like, okay, now we gotta really like sit down and write this book, but I'm still doing research. And I was like, okay, am I going to be able to get through all of this in October and still be able to like write everything I need? Because I really needed November and December to edit, because I did not want to try and crunch everything into December as far as editing wise, because that was just going to be a hot mess. Even though I was stressed, I knew that in the end it was going to pay off. It was going to be worth it. We had to get it done because we were on such a tight timetable and such a tight time schedule. And I was really trying not to be like, dang, if I had just stuck to my schedule that I had set forth, we could have had this done. Even though that's true, even though I didn't really like accomplish the goals that I wanted to accomplish, we're still making pretty good time. Like, we have 3 of the 6 characters' perspectives written. We already have some of the poems written. We just got to go through and like touch them up and fix them and make them more, better. So it was like I was stressing by September, but I still had hope and still believed I could pull it off. The month of September is where I really pushed myself to get as much writing for the book done. I managed to make good progress on the book that month, and I wasn't really all that stressed anymore about whether we were going to pull this off or not. I didn't get through everything I wanted to get through, but I got a pretty good chunk done in the month of September. And so because I had got that good chunk done by the end of September, when we started the month of October, what I was hopeful to do was to just finish the writing, finish up what I had left, and to focus on the poetry and the music and the lyrics. I had used September focusing more on like the younger protagonists, so by that point I was focusing more on like using the younger style of writing with them and stuff like that, and really just trying to make that distinction clear between the older ones and the younger ones. Although I was not as stressed as I was in September, going into October, I knew I had a lot left to do. There was still parts of the book to write, and I also still had the poems and raps to get done too. By the beginning of October, the challenges that we were facing were really just getting it done. Like, that was the only challenge, just getting it done. I'm not gonna say I was feeling burnt out, but I was kind of having to stop to take a little bit of a rest. The poetry and music research by the beginning of October was getting into full swing. I was planning to go through them, and what I was doing was I was looking at, the lyrics and like the beats and stuff like that, and like the beat per minutes and stuff like that, because I wanted it to be like when you read it you could kind of hear it in your head. And with the poetry, I was just studying different styles of poetry to like see what I could make work, see what I could work with, experiment with, stuff like that. So today is October 10th. I want to talk about how this book writing is going. I think I might have underestimated the amount of work that I would need to put into writing these poems and these songs. I'm not going to say I'm concerned, because I'm not concerned that I'm not going to make it on time with deadline. I know I'm going to make it on time with deadline. My concern is more so, is it going to be as good as I want it to be? I don't want it to be like, oh, you could tell I wrote this because it was deadline approaching. I don't want that. I want everything to be consistent. I want everything to like be as it's supposed to be. So I'm kind of just like, it's October, I really want the writing to be done by the end of this month, like completely, so that way I can spend November and December editing. That's how the whole poetry and music portion of the stuff is going. I think I might have underestimated how much work that was actually going to be. As far as the actual like book writing goes though, that's actually going pretty well. I'm just hopeful that when it comes to the poems and the songs, I can stick to the styles that I want to stick. Really, I have up until deadline to do it, but I don't want to be like the week of deadline still writing stuff. Today is October 21st. I'm working on the poems, and right now I'm working on the poems that are told from Torrance's perspective. All his poems are told in like freestyle, because rap is a form of poetry, whether you like it or not, it is. And because freestyling is such a huge part of his character, all of the poems from his perspective are being told in freestyle. So what I'm doing is right now I am taking the song data that I've collected, and like for a certain set of years in the 90s, I am taking like the beats and the lyrics of those songs and I'm studying them. So that way I can get like the beat per minute count and like get the flow and the tempo, because I really want to match his style to the style of that range of years, because those were the years when he was a teenager, sometime in the 90s. Those were the years when he was a teenager. Those were like his most formative years with the genre. Those are the years that would be like most influential on his style of rapping. So I'm trying to match his style of freestyling and rapping to that range of years in the 90s. So hopefully I can pull this off. So today is October 24th and it's about 1 in the morning. It's a lot of things I wish I had done differently this year. I wish I had been doing the poems throughout the year instead of saving everything for October. And also with the writing, I wish I had been more proactive in getting stuff down, because now we're in October, getting ready to be November, to try and make deadline on time. Those are some things I wish I had done differently this year, but it is what it is. I'm still believing we're going to be done on time. By the time we hit December, I was just kind of drained writing the book. I know it sounds dramatic, but there were some days when I truly felt like I was not going to make it. Around the time of deadline, it was just very stressful because like it all kind of just converged in December, and it was just like it was a lot going on. Today is December 18th, right? We are 10 days out from having to publish this book and all this, right? It's like there's so much still to do, and I'm like, I only got 10 days left. So I need to figure this out because there's still some pieces that I need to write in. There's still some poems that I need to get done. I'm in the middle of editing. This has kind of happened with every book, so I'm not really feeling like too like, oh my gosh, are we gonna make it? I know we're gonna make it. The question I have now is, am I gonna make it on December 28th like I planned, or am I gonna have to extend it past that day? But I do know this book is coming out this year. I know that much. So today is December 31st, and I missed my deadline for what I wanted to publish the book on, but I still made it in time for the end of the year. And I'm so happy because there were times when I thought I was not going to make it. There were times when I thought I was going to fail, but nope. The Lord saw fit. He saw me through and I made it. I made it. The book is ready. It's ready to go. It's done. It's edited. I'm excited. I'm happy. We're publishing it today. I am so excited. Although the book had its own set of challenges for me to overcome, the process was still rewarding. I was able to try out new writing styles and stretch my skills in a way I had not done so before. Overall, I feel like I accomplished what I wanted to do. I'm very proud of my poetic attempts in this book. What I can say about this book is I feel like audiences are going to enjoy this book because it's once again a book that I wrote from my heart, that I put a lot of time and effort into, and I put a lot of research into this book, and I did my best to make sure that it was as good as it could be and as best as it could be, and I truly think audiences will enjoy it. So with that being said, The Tide of New Beginnings is out today, so be sure to get your copy today.